All right, guys, let's get to a juicy story that continues to unfold even while we're doing this show. And I'm just looking at my phone right now, and then you kind of alluded to it there. So, Harry Kane, we've been trying to figure out if he stays with Spurs. In the beginning, we were also, and some people were still kind of watching, will he stay with Spurs? And then what would that mean for Jonathan David? You see how there's like this trickle effect when a big player moves, and what does this mean for other players? And maybe that's also just us really wanting Jonathan David to move on from Ligue 1, although they recently came out and said, we're in no rush, we're in no hurry, we're in no need to move him. Anyways, we'll see what happens with David. That's a story for another day. But we're hearing now that Bayern Munich has agreed to $100 million to bring on Harry Kane. We know Harry Kane has one more year left on his deal. He would ideally like a resolution to what's happening in his career before they kick off on August 13th. It still sounds like he's leaning towards staying with Spurs, the only organization he's ever really known. But Ollie, what are your thoughts on this potential move, and potentially, if he does move, joining Alphonso Davies?
Yeah, the question is, does he want to go? And it still seems kind of unclear. Like it seems strange to me that Bayern would go this far without kind of getting a bit of certainty that he would want to join them. But obviously, there's time for people to change their minds and rethink things, and maybe that's the case as the start of the season draws closer here. I think for Harry Kane, if you're going to Bayern, with no disrespect to the Bundesliga, it is not going to be as appealing to him as playing in the Premier League, continuing in the Premier League, is breaking the records that he is in close proximity to. So you're going there to win the Champions League, right? And I guess that's the question. Is that enough of a carrot for him to decide to leave Spurs? Could there be, a Premier League club that now that price is set? I don't know if Daniel Levy's going to want more from a Premier League rival. But now that price is set, could that kind of open the door for a team like Manchester United to come in? I'm not sure. I think that would be more appealing to Kane. I think staying in the Premier League would be more appealing to Kane. So we'll just wait and see, right? Like, does that attraction of Bayern and winning trophies, like, for me, winning the Bundesliga isn't going to be a legacy difference maker for Harry Kane. Winning the Champions League might be, and I think that's kind of the question that he might be mulling over right now.
Andy, what would you do? Like, what would you do if you were in his shoes? You're 30, you haven't won a thing at your club, and you're a legend there, and you're moving to becoming, the greatest Premier League goal scorer of all time, which is an individual accolade. Do you make the move to Bayern for that new experience, being a team, like a legendary club that is going to be in the mix for the Champions League every year? What do you do, Andy?
So here, and to your point, I think this is, at least what I look at. Fine, call it the word judge when I judge a player. I do look at their desire to win. And I get that it's sport and you're still guessing where the best place is to win. But to your point, if he stays at Spurs, what gives you any type of indication they're going to win anything except for the individual accolades? Is he going to take the risk to try and win something huge? And that's tough. That's tough, especially when you're leaving something that you've only ever known. I think it's very scary for a lot of players, but I do look at who has that desire to really win something big, or who's gotten just very comfortable and wants to continue with the status quo. I'm sorry to any Spurs fans out there who I'm basically saying, I don't think you're going to win the title. Don't think you're going to go on to win anything
Shocker.
big.
I don't think they'll be too mad at the minute.
Yeah.
But that's my point. So I guess to answer your question there, right? If you're Harry Kane, what is it that you want out of your career that is entering kind of the downswing? And of course, that I don't even know if I feel comfortable saying that, because you see athletes now in mid to late 30s who could continue to do things. But the bottom line is, what do you want out of your career? Because if you do want to win something big, I don't think you stay with Spurs. I just don't think you do.
No. Look, the one part of this story that isn't really talked about that often, and maybe it is and I just miss it, but it's, will he stay or will he go? But what an absolute embarrassment this is for a club like Spurs. World-class stadium, the infrastructure's there, a club with ambition. It's come to this point that, a club legend like Harry Kane is being forced into mulling over making a $100 million move to a club leading into the last year of his contract. It's just, what's going on here? Like, the fact that the club has had this player for so long, and they haven't won anything. They came close a couple times, full credit to them. And guess what? They sacked that manager in Mauricio Pochettino that got them that close. Like, just the management of this club, it's just, they should be so much more than they actually are with Harry Kane, and they're nowhere near there. If I'm Kane, I'm absolutely tempted by the Bayern Munich move, but that doesn't mean he's not going to be able to win beyond this season. I think he runs down his contract. I think he stays at Spurs this season, runs down his contract, then he can pick where he wants to go. Can then go to the highest bidder who wants to, pay them the money. Look, I think Premier League clubs would have been right in for Kane, even at this number, if Daniel Levy would sign or allow him to sign for another Premier League club. He won't. Doing business with this man across the Premier League is just exceptionally difficult, and it's forced another club from another market, another country to come in and play a player, try to pay for a player that clearly wants to stay in English football. I mean, that's clearly where his head's at. That doesn't mean that he won't end up in Bayern Munich in the end. It's a good opportunity for him, and I'm not going to say anything bad about Bayern Munich, but just what an embarrassment that we're even in this situation.
But it's from what I'm also understanding, and I don't know if you guys are hearing the same thing. It's Harry Kane who wants a deal done before the season begins, because he sounds like he doesn't want this hanging over his head. I wonder just the reality of that happening, because what realistically is even holding this up if you're Spurs? Like, what is going on that you can't say, let's get this deal done, let's silence this talk? I guess there's a part of me that's wondering what's going on.
This is how Spurs have always conducted themselves, though. They will try and rinse every single penny they can get out of whenever they sell a player like this, and they'll take it right to the deadline if they need to do that. And to be honest, it's a massive amount of money for a player as good as he is for his age and contract status. Like, they're going to get a huge fee, so it's kind of worked out for them in that sense.
Yeah, sure. And if he does stay at Spurs, I'll say this: like, the new manager that's come in, Ange Postecoglou from Celtic, I think the Spurs team with Harry Kane in it can score a lot of goals this season. And Harry Kane can put up some big numbers. So if he stays for a year and sees what this manager whose teams play good attacking football, I don't think it's a complete loss here. I just don't think that Spurs are inevitably going to want to pay the number per week next season that Harry Kane will demand. And then he can go off and he can sign for United or Newcastle or Liverpool or whoever it is. And I think that that's the more likely scenario. I just feel like the next 24 hours are obviously massive. I don't even need to really say that, but like, you're right, Andy. Like, they want a decision done, and I think the club at this point would prefer to sell him.
And I just hope that for the player's sake, if he does enter the year not having anything done, that you can put that aside and still have the year that you need to have. That in a year's time, the ball's in your court, right? Like, you're the one with the upper hand in this. Yeah,
it's class.
Yeah, mentally tough. There you go.